Hi guys, it's Kelly here and I'm back with another video with Pink Fresh Studio. Today we are going to be talking about stretching our supplies, specifically our holiday supplies. So today's product that I'm working with is going to be this poinsettia frame. Love this. I'm going to use both the stamp and the butter press to show you that it will work, either one. And then I'm also using the stencils and the die. This is the Here For You sentiments, using the stamps and the dies for that. And then also there's a thanks sentiment in this playful petals I'll be using. So for the first way that you can use this is the press plate. And I find that even though the cotton panels are out there, I find that with my ink blending or coloring or watercoloring, I actually prefer to press on watercolor paper. That may not be the true for you, but that is for me. So what I'm pressing into is watercolor paper. I like because it is a thicker paper, it does give me a really good impression. For this one, because it is an edge-to-edge design, I am kind of rolling up pieces of tape on top of themselves, and then I'm going to pick up the paper so that I have nothing on the edges. I don't want anything to kind of disturb that edge-to-edge design. And then I'm just using the regular black ink from Pink Fresh. This is the same one I will use to stamp in for my alcohol markers. And so I'm just going to basically ink up this plate like it was a stamp, but treat it the same, even though it's not. And then I will put the clear plastic, I call it the lid, I'll put the lid back on it and then run it through my Spellbinders Platinum 6. Always get a great impression. The butter press is so easy to use. So easy. So here, because my stamp is a red rubber stamp, that means it already has the foam built into it. So when I go to stamp it with my Misty, you do want to remove that that foam piece that's in there because it's built into the stamp. And then I remove the sentiment out of the middle. The sentiment is obviously Christmas sentiment. You can pop it in there and stamp it all as one piece, or you can do what I'm doing, which is just removing it and putting on a different sentiment. Most Misties, I think, come with that bar magnet nowadays, but I do have some older ones that still have the smaller magnets, and so I use 2 of those to just sit right there in the sentiment so that I could stamp it twice. It's just helping in keeping my paper stuck down, even though I'm using a sticky mat. I'm pretty aggressive. I aggressively use my sticky mats, and I don't really clean them. So that's on me. So the one on the left is the press plate. The one on the right is the stamping. And then from here, we're going to go into the coloring. For the coloring, I'm going to be using the stencils for both of them. But I'm picking 2 different color combinations. So one of the things that I really, really love about this particular frame set is it gives you all of these different layering pieces, but then it also gives you a piece where the background can be colored, which is amazing. So for here, I just chose some of the some of the greens. I'm going to go in with that. I believe this one is, I think it's Over the Hills. I think that's what that one is. It could not be. No, it's Green Gables. I'm sorry. It's Green Gables. So this is the one I'm starting with, and obviously I'm starting with the bigger brush. This whole layer is leaves. So I'm going to go in, and then I decided that I was going to leave the longer leaves, which are typically associated with the mistletoe, like the little berries in the background. So I am going to add some shading to them, but then once we get a little bit closer to the end and all the shading is done, I will use one of the greens from, now is that one Over the Hills? Is that what I was thinking? Yes, that one is Over the Hills. So that one has a little bit more yellow green. So in order to make, because they are 2 different types of greens, even though they're all on one layer of stencil, they are 2 different types. One is paired with the poinsettia, one is paired with the mistletoe, different shapes and everything. So I did want them to look different. I'm going to bring in that yellow green a little bit closer to the end for the ones that are with the poinsettia and just go over top of that. So we're still going to maintain all of this shading that we're putting in now, with the various size brushes, but we're just going to tint it to be a little bit more yellow to help separate it and show that it is in fact a different leaf. That I call, when I do it with my markers, I call it color glazing, but it's a really great way to, again, kind of stretch your supplies. Maybe you don't have as many inks, or maybe you don't have as many blender brushes, and so you're like, I really just want to, devote these to X colors and not have to worry about carrying multiple blender brushes. I get it. I totally get it. So there is that, what I've been talking about, going in with that more yellow green. I'm not trying to be crazy. I'm just trying to get the ones that are paired with the poinsettias. So we're making these thank you cards today. But one of the ways that this works is because we have those kind of essential dyes, or those shape dyes. So there's my greenery. For my dimensional layer, I'm going to be using the same colors you've already seen me use. I'm just going to be kind of cutting out the lighter colors. So for the mistletoe, for those darker leaves, I'm using the darkest one from Green Gables to go ahead and added my shading layer, which I think is Lush Forest. And then for the poinsettia ones, my darkest layer is going to be that olive. Just so that way it's, again, we're adding that detail, adding that dimension, and the stencils make it so easy for it to look good. So then once we're done with these, I think we move on to the berries and the berries and the base layer of the poinsettias. So because I wanted to do mine two different colors in order to make sure I'm not getting ink where I don't want it, I am going to end up bringing in some kind of low-tack tape. I wanted my poinsettias to be white, so I am using a combination of, pretty sure these are like the warm grays. It's called Urban Raincoat. It is Misty Coast and Rocky Slope. So those are the ones that I'm going to be adding the white shading with to my white poinsettias. And you might be saying to yourself, like, Kelly, girl, the background is white. You're barely going to even be able to see these white poinsettias. I totally understand where you're coming from. Hang tight. Stay with me, because the white poinsettias are going to pop, and there's going to be a ton of contrast. For my berries, I went with the more of a true red. This is from the Heartbeat pack, and I believe this one is passion fruit. And so I'm going to put that in as my base layer for my berries. And then that way, I can go in and add in further shading with the other red colors. You could do these any color, but I chose to, because I like when my cards photograph well together, like they work nicely together. So that is how I ended up choosing my color scheme. This is the Berrylicious. So, I wanted to do white poinsettias with red berries. And then here is that detail layer. And again, I'm going in first with that Misty Coast, and then I'll add in a little bit more of that Rocky Slope just to kind of build some dimension. You don't necessarily have to go with grays. You could go with really light versions of other colors, to kind of show them, like picking up the colors around them or reflecting the colors around them. But I was not trying to get that technical with it, even though I'm sure it would be beautiful. I just went with the lighter grays to add a little bit of shading so that they didn't look flat while everything else looked like it had dimension. And then the last red I'm adding is that candy apple. So here, really liking the way that they're coming together, I'm going to do the yellows just for the inside portion of the flowers. And that is going to be the two middles, I think, Sunshine and Sweet Mustard, or it might be Sunshine and Marigold. And then the additional layer for the berries, I'm going to, again, get that with the darkest, with that candy apple. And that, I think, is all that's on this particular stencil. For this one, it gives us even further detailing into the poinsettia. So I'm skipping the misty coast and just going straight into the rocky slope to kind of build up that darkness where the inside layers of the poinsettia are laying on the outside layers. So this is the one that I was telling you about in the beginning, and this one really is the game changer because it allows you to color the whole background by masking everything else that you've already ink blended. And that is so huge for creating that contrast. It really makes it very, very easy to do several different things or get several different looks. So this is from the Starry Night pack. I am using the Sapphire blue, and then I think the darker one, like really navy, is Stargazer. So I'm going through, and we've done the Sapphire all over, and then I'm going to go back in with the darker blue kind of more around the edges. And I am going to use my dies to cut these out, but you could absolutely leave it like this and still do all of the other things that I do. The only difference is your panel would not be popped up. So here you can go ahead and move that, and then you can see this beautiful contrast. We have those white poinsettias are popping off of that blue. And then for this one is a little bit more sped up. But we're doing the same kind of, well, this time we're doing more yellow greens as our base. So which is that over the hills combination. But we're going to work through this kind of the same way. So as I was saying before, I chose my colors because I like them to work together. So white poinsettias, red berries. With this one, I'm doing red poinsettias and white berries. But you could really, because with adding in those essential layers, those different shapes, you change the way that it looks so much that you wouldn't recognize that they were poinsettias if nobody pointed them out to you. And so because of that, you can really use this frame for anything, not even just holidays. You could use it for anything that you would like. For example, you could do these poinsettias like a hot pink or a yellow orange, do your berries like a purple or a blue, and it would definitely read as more tropical. But because you're leaving off that Christmas sentiment and then you're changing the shape of the frame, so you don't maybe necessarily see all of the pieces parts, the flowers can definitely read as different types of flowers. So here, before I could kind of risk it. I didn't really have to worry about getting the white from the poinsettias on the berries. Well, this time, because I want my berries to be white and I want my poinsettias to be red, I do have to go ahead and mask those. And again, I'm just using those same pieces of low tack tape. I basically use these until they either rip down so small I cannot use them anymore, or they're covered in so much ink that it's transferring. So I try to get as much out of them as I possibly can. So now going in and doing the additional layer, I am using that Misty Coast to add shading to the berries. And then once again, I will go ahead and mask them off with some low tack tape just to make sure we don't get any red where we don't want it. And then I will go ahead and move on and add, the darker shading with the darker color, which is that candy apple. Because I guess one of the reasons why I'm so excited about the stencil is because I am a person who, I really like dramatic contrast in my cards. So knowing that I can make the background any color that I would like, because the whole thing is going to be masked off, that I could, play with it. I could do a gradient if I wanted to. I could go in as dark as I would like. That's really, really a fun thing. Now, if you're like, I'm a colorist, I want to color, I didn't buy the stencils, I also understand that. In that case, you could just take an alcohol marker and trace around these images and then cut them out with the die cut and mount them over whatever color you chose to put in the background. And that would work well too. I am going to end up doing something similar for both of these cards, just because I wanted that added dimension from the foam tape, but you certainly don't have to do that. You can absolutely skip that part if it's not something that's important to you, or maybe you're mailing it a long way and you don't want to have it hand canceled or pay the extra postage. I understand that as well. So here, again, that third detail layer of the poinsettas, and all these inks are building up depth and dimension and darkness. Like, so they're all building, even if you're going over the same color, it's still building up more solid color. So here, again, I'm going to use their detail black. I'm just going to use it with a blending brush. There is a black in the Inkcube pack that's called Licorice, but I did not find that to be as dark. So this is just what I stuck with. And here you can see, just finishing that up, trying to get it as even as possible. The darker colors are a little bit more challenging to get even, especially if you're working with a smaller brush. So here, look at that beautiful contrast. I love it, love it, love it. So these are the two, and they do look a little bit more Christmassy right now, but we're going to use those blanket stitch hexagons. So I'm going to cut 2 pieces of white, and then I cut one out of silver and one out of gold. And originally I thought that's what I was going to end up going with. I ended up going back, and I didn't love the silver with the blue, so I ended up going back and cutting out a red. Here is that die that cuts out the frame that I was telling you about, and I love that it gets in between all the little pieces parts to really give it a great shape. It's not like a big clunky rectangle. It's kind of a shape of its own, and I will die cut both of them out. But here you can see, before I even start putting anything together, because this is how I do. Like, when I'm putting it together, I like to kind of play around with my pieces parts and see if my direction that I'm thinking of is going well. So here I've laid it down on some black cardstock. There is that gold glitter hexagon with the white on top of it. And can you see how it changes the background, where it no longer looks like poinsettas? It does start to look a little bit more tropical. I love that. I love any types of products that we can stretch and then use for other things in the year, just by maybe changing the portion of it that we see, or changing our color combination. I just love that. So here's where I switched over to the red, and I didn't want to do them exactly the same. So I ended up trimming, like, I cut the blanket stitch hexagon, and then I went in with the one that was slightly smaller because they're nested, and I created a frame. And then that frame, I tried it originally like this. I did not love it, but the frame was really kind of fun. It was a little bit too big. It left this gap in between, but I really enjoyed that, and I thought that it added an extra level of interest. For my sentiments, these are, again, the thank sentiment is from Playful Petals, and the thank you is from the Here For You sentiments, which is just kind of a great all over sentiment set. But I'm going to stamp the thanks in black. That is the one that will go on the black background card. And then the thank you itself will get stamped in Stargazer, which is the darkest blue. And that one will go with the blue background card. Both of these will be cut out with their coordinating dies. Even though they are stamped on white and they're going on white hexagons. I could have stamped them on the hexagons, but honestly, because I wasn't 100% sure, I would rather stamp them and cut them out so that I can kind of play around with them than stamp them on my hexagons and realize that I have to find another specialty sheet of paper or something else to stamp them on, because I was messing around and kind of used up what I had. So here for this one, I am going to do the flowers flat. So when I line them up, I try to make sure that I line up the bottom edge. I start in the corner, so a bottom corner, and then I work my way up to the top to make sure that corner is matching, and then the rest I just kind of let fall into place. I added some glitter to the centers of the flowers, and then I'm also going to add some white gel pen highlights to the berries, to the stamen of the flowers. To me, that type of detail work just helps kind of set everything apart. And then for the sentiment, and it's like kind of hexagon holders, I'm going to add the sentiment into the middle there, and then once that's glued down flat, I will then glue this down to the glitter paper. That does take a second to dry because it's not like regular cardstock. It is, a non-porous surface. So now I can go ahead and add foam tape to this part so that I can pop it up, because this card, even though we've stenciled it and die cut it and everything else, it is a little bit more on the simple side. And so we want to make sure that we have enough going on that we can add interest to it. And for me, oftentimes that is adding foam tape behind it, even to my detriment, even when I know it's going to take longer and I'm going to have to cut all these little pieces and it's going to be a pain. If I think the card will look better with foam, then I do it anyway. I cut it all up anyway. So now we're going to go ahead and remove those backer pieces. And then anytime I'm trying to get something centered with the foam, I do typically like to stand up at my desk and then look at it face down. So that way I'm sure that it is straight and it's in the middle. And then I'm just going to set that one aside while we work on the next one. This one is a little bit different. I'm going to be popping up the whole frame. And so I'm going to try to make my life as easy as possible with that instead of doing them as separate pieces. So I'm going to first line them up in my corner. Then I am going to adhere the red glitter frame in the center. And then from there, I can put a little bit of glue around the edges of my white hexagon in the center, and it will also adhere in place, so that way when I'm going to put my foam adhesive behind it, I can see all of the connection points, and this cuts down on how many like finicky little pieces I have to trim, because those are not my favorite part. So here I did decide to go ahead and add on the sentiment. That is the one that we stamped in that stargazer, that navy blue color. And they do, like, I could see how this one reads a little bit more Christmas. But I can also see, making these as your Christmas thank you cards. I traditionally don't send thank you cards after Christmas because typically the only people I'm exchanging gifts with are people in my like immediate family who I can just say, thank you and give them a hug or whatever when it's going on. If I had people I was sending gifts that were, farther away, I probably would send thank you cards, or that I was receiving farther away. There you could see just a little bit of that foam tape, so I was tucking it in with my pair of scissors. And then for the sentiments, I went back and forth with a couple which ones to include in the accents, but ultimately I ended up settling for the gold metallic pearls. I think they worked best with both of them. And this is also to just help fill up that space you know, because you just have your one sentiment in those hexagons. And then this is both cards. So I hope that this inspires you to kind of stretch what you have past the holidays, you know, and helps you to feel more comfortable creating a little bit more dramatic contrast. Thank you guys so much for joining me. I always appreciate your time, and I'll catch you on the next video. Bye.